Hi there. I am Anna with VSAC, and I am here talking with Dan Wheeler, who's going to tell us a little bit more about his work. So, Dan, I'll have you start by, can you tell us what is it that you do for work?
You got it. So I am Dan Wheeler, obviously, I introduced, but yeah, I'm a physical therapist working over at Dan Wyand PT and Associates. It's a clinic that has an affiliation with NVRH. So we're not technically owned by NVRH, but we have a strong affiliation with them, and we're on their campus at two different locations. So.
Awesome. Thanks. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your job entails?
Yep. So basically, people come into the clinic, and it's treating them for whatever functional ailment they have on a physical basis. So, so when someone comes in for a new visit, essentially we take a history of this individual, and then we perform a physical evaluation depending on what their symptoms are, and kind of look at their whole body and kind of identify where their ailments are, where the dysfunctions are, and then come up with a treatment plan depending on what the signs and symptoms point out. So that happens, and once we have them, evaluated, then we come up with a treatment plan, and then essentially the rest of the day is having people come in for follow-up visits, continuing on the treatment plan that we've come up with after the course of the evaluation.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about like your educational and career background and how you came into this kind of work?
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one. So, essentially, I went to UVM, so I went to undergraduate college, and had essentially no idea what I wanted to do. So, I started out as a history major for about, I think, a quarter of a semester, and then decided, yeah, I like history, but I don't know if this is what I want to do for a career. So then I became a business major for about a year and a half. Took a lot of economics and business courses, and didn't really get too excited about that. And then I kind of settled on biology, and took and just because it was easy, I wanted to learn more about it. So I took kind of like a modified pre-med curriculum, and just picked and choose some courses that I thought were interesting. And it didn't work out that well because I had to take a fifth year, which I said was for athletic reasons. I had another year of eligibility, but I fell in love with biology. I fell in love with anatomy and physiology, and I stayed with that course. And then I graduated, and instead of going on to the medical doctor route, I kind of wanted to keep my options open a little bit. So I just did some job shadowing, and kind of did a lot of researching on different types of healthcare fields. And I mean, anything from like dental, to optometry. And in my shadowing and in my research, it seemed like physical therapy was something that always came back to me. And what happened was, a woman that I was working with, I had a job that I was working with in between graduate and undergraduate school, and I was working in a laboratory. And this woman was going back to school for physical therapy, and I said, "Wow, this seems pretty cool." And just in our conversations, it kind of kept coming back to me a little bit. And so I applied for PT school, and it was the only school I applied to was UVM, and I got in. And as soon as I started it, I knew it was the right fit, and never looked back.
That's great. What are some of your favorite things about your work?
It's the puzzle. It's every patient's different. You could have, your entire patient load, all 10 to 11 patients all day, have the exact same thing, but each patient's different, so you have to, not only do you have to kind of organize and evaluate their symptoms, but you kind of got to organize and evaluate the patient as well, like their actual, their personality, how to speak with them, how to connect with them, what are their interests. So it's always different. And it's not just finding out what's wrong with them, but it's finding out, what makes them tick, and how you're going to be able to kind of engage and connect with them to have them kind of feed into what you're advising them to do. Because, a lot of times physical therapy is not, people don't choose and say, this is something I want to do today. This is something this sounds like fun, getting my knee cranked on or my shoulder, mobilized. Many times we make people feel a lot better, but through the course of some of our treatments, it can be somewhat tough and challenging at times. So the challenge is definitely, obviously the figuring out what's going on with the individual, but also getting to meet new people and find out how they like to be addressed, talked to, worked with, and how we're able to let them buy into what we're training them in.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you find the most challenging about the work?
100% the compliance. It is in that, whether it's our failure or just we're not able to connect to the patient, it's the compliance with the program. Many times we have people come back in and they say, I don't know if this is working. And we're like, well, have you done some of the home exercises that we've sent you home? Have you done some of the mobilizations and stretches that we've advised you in? And they'll say no, and so then we have to go back to the drawing board and be like, how are we going to make this a priority, right? How are we going to, have this be something that you really want to do and know that you have to do it. So it is the compliance to the program, just like anything. You got strep throat, your doctor can't force you to take your penicillin, but you just do usually. So many times it's just finding out how we can adjust that and make this have a little more priority in people's day. So that's what it is.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And you've talked a little bit about this already, but is there anything else you would want to add about what a typical day might look like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we arrive to the clinic, we know who we're going to see. We have a list of our scheduled patients, and then we if there's time, and we're not running late or anything, we can do a little bit of a chart review and get an idea as to what's going on with our patients. What did I do last time with John Smith, and there is no John Smith, there's no HIPAA violation there, so at least not on my schedule. So there is, we just kind of find out, we look to see whether or not we want to change up our treatment style, but then the patients start rolling in, and that happens pretty quick. So the patients start rolling in, and we either perform an evaluation, which is usually about an hour long. And again, there's a lot of talking, a lot of getting to know the patient, and then full on evaluation and treatments. And then if it's a returning patient, then we're just following through with our current treatment plan, whether it's a mobilization, stretching program, other types of modalities that we use. We use ultrasound, electronic stimulation, cupping therapy, dry needling, and just whatever treatment is part of their plan, or if it's just taking them out to the gym and getting them on a strength and conditioning program after we've identified, what their targeted areas are, and how we get those certain muscle groups or joints moving. And then a lot of notes. That's, anyone who's in any healthcare field knows that's also a heavy, I don't know if burden's the right word, but a heavy load of our day is spent with documentation. So, and there's ways to make it a little more efficient, but whatever treatment we do, anything that we perform, that has to be documented. The reason why it has to be documented, and hopefully it's approved by the organization or the person paying it. So.
Thanks. What do you think would make someone a good fit for this kind of work? So
I thought about this question before, and I think above all, you really do have to be able to have a good, people call it bedside manner, they call it whatever, but you really have to be able to kind of be able to deal with people. You're dealing with people that are coming in, again, not necessarily because they want to, even if their ailment makes them want to come in, but you're dealing with people that are going to be complaining about something, and you've got to be able to, take that in with a compassionate view, with an empathetic, kind of, and use a lot of empathy and use that lens, and also be able to kind of roll with the punches. There might be some things that you're not able to help them with, or things that, you need to adapt or modify yourself. And so you got to be able to use your own coping strategies and mechanisms. You got to have a strong constitution. But above all, you gotta stay positive and keep it going, and if you're able to do that, then you can see the patient turn around with you, and they reflect the energy and the activity that you're putting out. So you got to have that ability to, whether or not it's play chameleon and find some type of connection with the patient or the person. But and that's another thing too. You gotta view them as a person and not just patient X coming in. Like, get to know them. You have to do that. You've find out how their kids are. Find out what they like to do. But you've got to be able to go beyond the tests and measures. So, and that stuff you either have or you don't. And you can work on it, and hopefully that's something you can get. But you really got to be able to talk with people and deal with people, and again, be able to kind of roll with the punches. But also the physical attributes too. You've got to have the body awareness. You gotta know how bodies move, and that can come with training. That can come with moving bodies around your own body, but assessing the mechanics and the strategies about how people move. Got to have a good memory too. People like being remembered. And you like to you need to be able to remember certain anatomy and a lot of anatomy actually, and so I guess there's a bunch of things that you got to kind of look for, and you got to be honest with yourself too as to whether or not you like it, because people can see through you. So
That's great. And so maybe kind of leading into the next question, if a student is thinking this might be, like a middle or high school student is thinking maybe this is something they're interested in, what would you recommend they do now? Like classes they should take, or volunteer projects, or kind of job shadows or conversations or any of that?
All of it. So as far as opportunities, we talk about this a lot, but seems like every high school has athletic training, right? So they've got an athletic trainer who's honestly usually overburdened with a lot of kids coming in. If you got time, volunteer with your athletic trainer, help them, see if they want help, taping joints, taping ankles and stuff, and just being around there. And a lot of high schools around the area too are offering now kind of like sports medicine type classes or different types of anatomy type classes to get your feet wet into learning body mechanics and body anatomy, and also certain ailments, and being around people that get hurt. Athletes get hurt, so especially in high school. So you get a lot of exposure into that avenue a little bit. But yeah, there are volunteer opportunities. You can potentially, go to a PT clinic. Sometimes it's hard, especially in COVID times, but sometimes there are certain things that people can do, such as clean rooms, clean equipment, help some of the the frontline staff. So there are some volunteer options that may be available, especially in more stable times. PT aides. Sometimes people can get certified as a PT aide and be able to work in the gym or even perform certain tasks around the clinic. But yeah, different types of exposure with a lot of science-based courses, getting the memory up, getting a lot of anatomy and physiology heavy loaded onto that would be good as far as that high school age student. Yeah.
And then you talked a little bit about this with your educational background, but what kind of education should a student be thinking about if this is something they want to pursue?
Another thing, I love this because I feel like I can help people with basically where I went wrong. But what I would tell, especially the aspiring junior and senior, I would tell them that, you don't have to go for the rock star Ivy League school in order to be a PT. If you've got a good course workload, if you have a good aptitude for getting decent grades, and a strong student curriculum base, you can get into any college that's affordable, and even pursue routes that fast track you into the system. I know that I don't know if UVM still does this, but there are some curriculums that used to do a 3+3, where you could do 3 years of undergraduate and then integrate right into your graduate program studies. So your first year of graduate studies was actually under an undergraduate tuition rate, which for anyone who could do that is fantastic, because there is a significant jump both in pricing and in financial aid availability once you go from the undergraduate to graduate realm. So you do have to kind of know exactly where you want to go in order to do that. I took the non-traditional route, went through my undergraduate years, took some time off before going into it. And people say sometimes it's hard to go back. I didn't feel like it was hard to go back at all, because you find out what you really love doing. So from a financial standpoint, maybe it's a little easier going right into undergraduate to graduate study and just getting it done and getting it started. But on the flip side, like sometimes people need to discover themselves a little bit and mature, grow up, and then they actually take their schooling a lot more serious after pursuing it at a little bit older life. And they can kind of utilize school as a working progress rather than assignments. And so I guess the best thing that I could kind of guide people in is to not necessarily overburden yourself with going for that rock star high end university if just the numbers don't add up, because as long as you can get the grade and perform good volunteerships, volunteer organizations, and just put your work in, you'll get into a PT school, and then once you're there, it just, if you fall in love with it, and hopefully you do, but you'll be able to just kind of streamline and get into your career goals. So
That's great. Thanks. Anything else you would want to share about your work or just in general with students who are watching this?
People are always going to get hurt. People are always going to grow old, and with that, this is definitely a career that's always going to have some high priority in the medical field. We work well with a lot of primary cares. We work well with a lot of people that surgeons that are doing the slicing and dicing. So our end is helping people sometimes to avoid that, helping to keep them off the the surgical table, or to help them out once they've already been on it. And because of that, this is a career that's always going to be in demand. This is an underserved area, as is being in the Northeast Kingdom. And it's a very fun career choice for those that are willing to jump into it, so it has a high retention rate, and it does have a lot of happiness associated with it as well. So
That's great. Well, thank you so much.
no problem.